I get how they're trying to re-implement Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but, it's a little bit different when you got Mountain Dew and then, your mom comes home and brings Mountain Shoutin'.
Mountain Shoutin'.
The off-brand. It's a little bit different when you're like, hey, Mom, can you pick me up some Dr. Pepper? And she comes home with Dr. Thunder. You're like, oh, thanks, Mom.
And then you take that first and be like, oh. You'd be like, okay, this growing on me.
6 players that are going to break out in fantasy football this year, meaning you should probably draft these guys this year. We're going to give 3 players each. Do us a favor, hit the like button, subscribe if you like the content. We got a like goal today of 75 likes. With your help, I think we might be able to get there. But player number 1, I'm all in, baby. What did I say, a couple years ago? Pablo Picasso was born to paint.
Uh-oh.
Who was born to play wide receiver, Badaki?
George Pickens.
George Pickens was born to play wide receiver. He's my wide receiver 21. On most sites, he's wide receiver 28 to 29. I think he's a huge discount right now in drafts. He's taken huge strides like every single year. As a rookie, 16% of the target share. Second year, 22% of the target share. His targets going up, his receiving yards per game going up, his fantasy points per game going up. And by the way, I just think like as a whole in the fantasy community, we haven't given George Pickens enough props for his season last year. The guy almost had 1,200 receiving yards and an offense that featured Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Mitch Trubisky. None of these guys cracked anywhere near the top 25 on a PFF quarterback grade. Nowhere near that. I mean, there's 32 starting quarterbacks, right? None of these guys were even close to the top 25. And by the way, his catchable target rate, shout out to fantasy points data for this, his catchable target rate, 72.4%, meaning 72% of his targets were actually catchable. That ranks 143rd amongst wide receivers last year alone. 143rd.
That's crazy.
And he was on a team that threw the 27th most passing attempts per game. Considering how bad his quarterback play was, I think we should have given him a lot more props. How did he overcome that? You might be sitting there thinking like, how did he overcome that quarterback play then? Well, it's because he was one of the more efficient wide receivers per touch all of last year.
Yeah.
I know that sounds crazy, but it's true.
Yeah,
he did the most with his targets. Yards per reception, he was first amongst wide receivers who had at least 30 targets. By the way, second was Brandon Ayuk. What did that guy do? What did Ayuk do last year? Well, he was pretty damn good on a per touch basis. He just had a little bit better quarterback.
Right.
How about yards per target? He was 5th. More than Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, DJ Moore, CeeDee Lamb last year. How about yak per reception? He was 7th. George Pickens, a big body X wide receiver, was 7th in yak per reception last year.
Body bends.
He had more yards per catch, or yards after catch per reception than Puka, Waddle, Amon-Ra, and Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
Some of the biggest yak monsters in the NFL. And now there's no one in his way to stop him from going nuclear, right? His biggest competition for target share, they shipped him off to Carolina, Deontay Johnson. Last year, Deontay had 24% of the target share, while Pickens had 22%. I am projecting this year for George Pickens to get at least 25% of the target share. There's the natural growth. And now you add on to the fact that Deontay Johnson is gone. Personally, I think 25% might be like too little. I think he could get like 25, 27, somewhere in that range percent of this offense.
Okay.
So I think the moon is calling George Pickens.
Look, I like George Pickens, and I've been flip-flopping on Dynasty, on Redraft, on whether George Pickens should be this breakout guy. I'm more concerned, and actually this question, when it comes down to the quarterback play, I understand the quarterback play was the worst, but I'm not as confident, or I would say more confident in Russell Wilson. Yes, he's been the guy to produce fantasy development wide receivers in the past. Obviously, we've seen in, Tyler Lockett, the DK Metcalfs back in the day, but he kind of took a massive step back. I think there has to be more of George Pickens doing extraordinary things than Russell Wilson just feeding him the ball, right? So I'm a little bit concerned about that.
Here's the thing. George Pickens, what's stopping him last year from being a top 24 points per game finish? Touchdown equity. Why? Because Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and Mitch Trubisky can't throw a touchdown to save their fucking life, okay? Respectfully. What did Russell Wilson do last year for Cortland Sutton? Cortland Sutton's touchdown percentage was one of the highest amongst any starting wide receivers on any team. All the dude did was catch touchdowns. So we know Pickens is capable. Now you got a guy who is able to get it to him in the red zone. I think the sky is truly the limit for a guy like George Pickens. So I get the concern. I think let's just agree with this. It is a quarterback upgrade. You agree?
Yes, it is a quarterback upgrade. No
so
question.
It is a quarterback upgrade. There will be a higher percentage of the targets. I don't know. I think that's a guy I'm going to bet on.
I would say they're all in the same lower tier. Russell Wilson is just at the very top, and all those other guys are at the bottom, and he's done it. So I understand there. All right, going to my breakout player here. And if you've been following with us on the Dynasty channel, I've kind of already put my stamp on him, and that is Dalton Kincaid, my first breakout player at the tight end position, an underdog tight end 5 on Underdog, ESPN, and Sleeper. For me, I'm still flip-flop. I want to put him as my tight end 3, but I don't know if I can put him over Mark Andrews, so I'm flip-flopping between tight end 3 and tight end 4. Yeah. And one of the research and things that I wanted to bring you guys to bring you more assurance and reassurance when you do draft Dalton Kincaid is what these tight ends did in the past 7 years from year 1 to year 2 and how they've progressed. Okay. And I broke it down for the past 7 years from 2022 to 2017 or 2023 technically, right? How all these guys have progressed from year 1. You can see it in Trey McBride, tight end 40 to tight end 7. Kyle Pitts, tight end 6. Obviously, he goes down with that injury in his second year, but you even see it with Pat Frymuth, 13 to 7, 41 to 20 for Cole Kmet, 31 to 5 for TJ Hawkinson. Even some of these lower tier guys, they still improve. Noah Fant, tight end 16 to tight end 9, 33 to 22 for Irv Smith. And you can obviously see the list kind of goes on there for those second half players that we all know and love in the past. 11 out of those 13 tight ends has improved for fantasy in the last 7 years. Dalton Kincaid in his rookie year outperformed 11 out of those 13 tight ends that you've seen in the past 7 years in his rookie year once again. So Dalton Kincaid coming in, who, by the way, had a quote-unquote underwhelming tight end year because of Sam Laporta, who finished as a tight end 1 as a rookie. And we are not saying that we are drafting them. I'm not saying that we're concerned about Dalton Kincaid, but we're drafting him with significant gap in between, right? Sam Laporta, we can see sometimes going in the early 3rd with Dalton Kincaid, maybe going in the 5th, sometimes falling in the 6th round of your redraft leagues. I've been saying this all offseason. Dalton Kincaid is the number 1 target. Keon Coleman, if you've been following with us, he is not the guy that we believe he's going to be. I love the idea of Curtis Samuel. I love the idea of Shakira. But Dalton Kincaid is going to be the Mark Andrews to Lamar Jackson, the Travis Kelce to Patrick Mahomes. That's who Dalton Kincaid is going to be for Josh Allen. And one of the things I want to close out with is the target percentage. Dalton Kincaid saw 12% of the Bills' targets in the first 6 games and shared with Dawson Knox. Because I think a lot of people saying, yeah, but Dawson Knox was hurt. Okay? When Dawson Knox went out, right? So keep in mind, 12.5% when Dawson Knox was in for the first 6 games. Dawson Knox came back or left those games. He went to 19.8. When Knox came back in the last 7 games, that was still 17.7% of the target share. So even when Knox was back on the field, Dalton Kincaid was still getting those opportunities where, once again, I think that kind of debunks a lot of these conversations of Dawson Knox saying, oh, whoa, he's going to get more opportunity because he was injured. No, because we still saw over 15% target share for Dalton Kincaid. And keep in mind, that was with Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs is no longer on this team. So for me, it's easily Dalton Kincaid coming into this year for my breakout.
I have no disagreement whatsoever. I think the only thing that stops Kincaid from breaking out this year is an injury.
Sure.
And, you mentioned it. People are underwhelmed by Kincaid's rookie season. I just think Sam Laporta set really bad expectations. If Sam Laporta didn't do what he did last year, you would have looked at Dalton Kincaid, who finishes a tight end 11 as a rookie, and said, that's incredible. We don't ever see that. You look at year 1 seasons for rookie tight ends, most of them are in the 20s, like 25 to 30, finish in their year 1. Dalton Kincaid finishes as a tight end 11 and wasn't even the starter to begin the year. To me, I find it impressive. So I'm with you, dude. I think he's going to break out. I think the sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, I love him.
Knox doesn't worry me though.
Nah, he doesn't worry me at all. A lot of people, that's what a lot of people's conversations though. Nah, he was hurt. Knox is still the guy. No, thank you.
First round pick. I get the concern, but I mean, they drafted.
That's what I'm saying.
Kincaid in round 1.
Exactly. Dawson Knox was a 4th round pick, so give me Kincaid every day.
All right, we're gonna get into the next breakout, but we got to let you know. Maybe you're sitting there like, why are they even talking about fantasy? We're so far away. We're not. Fantasy is happening right now today. You can get in real drafts for real money, real tournaments over on UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code LAND to sign up. We will have a first-time deposit match, 50% all the way up to $250. So if you think about that, you deposit $250 using the code LAND, you will get $125 for free just by using our code. Maybe you're not a best ball guy, you don't want to get into tournaments, but you like player props. Well, they got incredible player props over on the Flock Fantasy website, MLB, WNBA, whatever you're into. They got it over there on Underdog. You can 5x, 10x, 20x your money. They got special pick'ems. Like, for example, they had this recent one with Caitlin Clark, over under 0.5 points. It just gets the ball rolling for you. It's kind of a free hit, if you will. So use the promo code LAND. Check out the pinned comment. But the next player I think is going to break out in 2024.
Oh, boy.
And I know this is very, what's the word? Controversial. This is the name that you're either in or you're out on. Zamir White.
Okay.
Zamir White is going to feast. He's going to feast this year. We all know that volume is king. And if you look at the top 12 finishes last year in 2023, they all had something in common, which was they saw a lot of touches per game. They were also very good players, but they had a lot of opportunities in fantasy football, right? I actually looked at the top 12 finishes and their touches per game, which is carries and receptions, okay? On a per game basis. You can see here, CMC at 21. You got Derrick Henry at 18, Alvin Kamara almost at 20. But the average of those top 12 was 18.3 opportunities per game. Well, we have seen Zamir White start for this team, for this head coach, for this organization, 4 games last year when Josh Jacobs went down. From weeks 15 to 18, Josh Jacobs was down. And in those 4 games, Zamir White averaged 23.3 touches per game, which is more than any running back that we just talked about. He's clearly not as talented as those names, but volume is the heart of a top 12 running back. The heart still relies on a network of blood vessels, right? Those network of blood vessels being what offense you're in, what your role in that offense, how talented you are, how many receptions you'll get. But still, the heart is volume. And Zamir White has got that heart in 2024. I'm not sitting here saying he's going to be a top 12 dude. I'm not sitting here saying that he's as good as those guys or that I know he's going to get 20 touches per game. But it's the same guy who decided to give him that workload last year. And I would argue his running back room is still pretty weak. Alexander Mattison is a nobody. And there's a big difference between betting on Mattison in Minnesota last year than betting on Zamir in Las Vegas this year, in my personal opinion. Number one, Zamir White was actually really good in place of Josh Jacobs, while Mattison was awful. One of the league's most inefficient backs the 2 years before he became the starter, averaging 3.7 yards per carry in those seasons. Meanwhile, you got Zamir White, who faced the Chiefs last year and started one of the best defenses in the NFL last year and put up over 6.5 yards per carry while rushing for 145 yards. These two dudes are different. Zamir White was a 5-star recruit. He's dealt with injuries, but he's in a different stratosphere of talent compared to Alexander Mattison. And when you look at Mattison last year, he was set up, he had the volume, but he was a part of an offense that wanted to air the ball out everywhere. In Minnesota, KOC's offense, you're throwing it left, right, center. In Las Vegas, their identity is clear. The Raider way. Run it down their throats until they can't breathe.
Yeah.
Pause.
I mean,
we'll have to pause there.
You have to pause.
But, the coach speak is there. They love Zamir White. They keep talking about Mattison as a depth piece. I think Zamir White to the moon, baby. I'll be drafting him in as many drafts as I can.
Look, I like Alexander Mattison coming into this year. I am a little bit... Zamir White. I am a little bit hesitant when it does come down to his ADP. And I just had a quick look of last year's ADP. And I know you compared Alexander Mattison, you kind of debunked that. But last year, Alexander Mattison... with those opportunities or with the projected opportunities with the, whether it's in the air or on the ground, we were excited. He was the RB20. That was his ADP going after Miles Sanders, before Alvin Kamara, before Rashad Wright, before James Conner. I get it. I do believe he can easily finish the top 20 running back. I'm just a little bit more skeptical. If he can fall to me at a good price as I'm doing my drafts, I'm happy to take the shot.
Well, I think if Madison hadn't failed so spectacularly last year, you would have seen a similar ADP for Zamir White, if not higher. So I think in a way that actually makes Zamir White's price quite reasonable to bet on the pros and cons there. You said RB20. On Sleeper, he's RB26, Zamir White is. So I definitely get it, but I just think they're two different scenarios, two different players.
And I completely agree. I think I would say this to kind of just back up your point as well, and then I'll go to my player. The people that he's going around currently, James Conner, DeAndre Swift, Jalen Warren, Najee Harris, Tony Pollards, that is a no-brainer compared to what we saw last year with Alexander Madison. He was dealing with Alvin Kamara, who was 3 years suspended. We thought of Rashad White, who we didn't know how was going to be in the beginning of the season. So I definitely understand when it does come down to Zamir White there. All right, going to my second play that will break out, and it's never okay when you bring a quarterback to break out, but I'm doing it anyway. Because it's one of the toughest positions, and I think a lot of people will disagree, but it's Will Levis.
Okay.
Will Levis will have a breakout season.
Mayonnaise boy's going to break out?
A mayonnaise boy? Listen.
Not if he keeps putting mayonnaise in that coffee.
Apparently he got a tape out there. I don't know if you've seen it.
I don't know. Something's not clicking for me with mayonnaise boy.
Look,
let's hear it.
Look, let me just say this before I even get into my take. Top 15. I would say is a good breakout year for Will Levis. That is, but I'm not saying he's going to finish the top 10. A top 15 finish, I think, is just as good for a breakout for Will Levis. QB 24 on Underdog, 28 on ESPN, 24 on Sleeper. He is my QB 21. Will Levis coming into this league, we all knew he was going to be a project. He was going to. He had trouble reading defenses and stepping up into the pocket and feeling these pressures. But going into 2024, it's a new season, right? The new head coach, new offensive coordinator, Brian Callahan, coming from the Cincinnati Bengals, where we saw in 2023 and from 2019 to 2023 be one of the most high-powered offenses in these past, obviously with Joe Burrow there. Obviously, the quarterback is a huge play. But he brings a high-powered, fast-paced, high-scoring offense that I'm hoping and I'm believing that Brian's bringing to the Tennessee Titans. It is clear that they want to be more of a pass-heavy offense rather than a run-heavy offense. Why? Because they let go of Derrick Henry, who was toking the ball 25-plus times a game, right? That is completely different. Another thing is the depth of weapons that the Tennessee Titans went out and got. Obviously, they got DeAndre Hopkins, right? That was a team or player that this front office was inherited, right? But they go out and pick off the streets, essentially, Calvin Ridley, who has had the history of being a successful wide receiver outside of, I would say, last year, right, with those expectations. Treylon Burks, who is still there. He's still talented. A first-round draft pick. What can he bounce back with? Less pressure. Tyler Boyd, who was in Brian Callahan's offense with Cincinnati, he is going to be a weapon. Chig Okonkwo, Tony Pollard, and Tajay Spears. One of the things I did say last year or earlier in the take was him stepping up into the pocket and getting having those reads. I think that was a huge concern last year because the Tennessee Titans offensive line was terrible. They were, according to PFF, they were dead last in offensive line rankings for the 2023 season because of injuries and because of all these other things. The reason why we've even saw Will Levis on the field was because the Tennessee Titans offensive line got Ryan Tannehill hurt because he was getting sacked. They were giving up the most sacks last year with 49 sacks. Okay, now they go out and they draft J.C. Latham, who's arguably, in a lot of people's minds, the one of the first best offensive linemen. They signed Lloyd Cushenberry from the Broncos. Year 2 for the Peter Skoronski, who was the best offensive lineman, one of the best offensive linemen in his draft class. There's a lot of things that are going right here and is lining up the cards for Will Levis to take the next step. And one of the underrated things that I think a lot of people forget about, and I'm not saying he's going to be utilizing this, but he has it as a weapon, as a back pocket, kind of where we can potentially see. I'm not saying he's going to be Daniel Jones, but you weren't expecting Daniel Jones to rush for 800 yards that year when he went to the playoffs. Will Levis coming out of Kentucky, remember, in 2021, he was a talk of the town. He was going to be a first-round draft pick. He was going to be this guy. Why? Because he has an incredible arm, and he had rushing talent. He can utilize his legs. You saw that in 2021 in Kentucky where he rushed for 560 yards. He took the ball 63 times as a rusher. Maybe because the offensive line was terrible or whatever the case may be, but we liked him because of the rushing upside. And in 2022, he does get injured, takes a step back. He's not rushing as much, and he was dealing with injuries as well this past year in 2023, obviously, because he didn't finish out the year, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he didn't finish out the year because he played weeks 8 to 15. Yeah. And keep in mind that he did produce in a span, weeks 8 to 15, for DeAndre Hopkins to be a top 10 wide receiver in that span. What happened in another year, right? Another year with all these weapons, another year with a better offensive line, and a good year, I guess first year with a high-powered, I guess, projected offense coming into 2024.
Yeah.
So It's tough. I get it. You have no confidence in Will Levis. And like I said,
here's the thing. Like, I am super interested to see what happens with the Titans. They might be one of the most interesting storylines heading into 2024 because they could be really good and turn it around, or they could fail spectacularly.
1,000%.
I get how they're trying to re-implement Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, but, you know, it's a little bit different when you got Mountain Dew and then, you know, your mom comes home and brings Mountain Shoutin'. The off-brand. It's a little bit different when you're like, hey, Mom, can you pick me up some Dr. Pepper? And she comes home with Dr. Thunder. You're like, oh, thanks, Mom.
And then you take that first day and be like, oh, you'd be like, okay, this growing on me. After the first 2 glasses, you're saying, this tastes just like Dr. Pepper. And then you're like, oh.
You're tricking your mind into it. So I'm not sure if the Titans will be good or not, but it's certainly like an upside play.
Let me ask you this. In your mind, is top 15, if he finished QB 15 at the end of this year, is that a good season for you? I think
that's a good season. I mean, there's a lot of good quarterbacks in the NFL now. So, yeah, that's a good season.
I mean, it is tough. That's
top
what I'm saying.
15, you know, that's impressive if you can pull that off.
Yeah.
All right, last player I think is going to break out in 2024. Don't hate me, all right? Don't hate me because you ain't me. All right? Jackson Smith-Njigba, it's time, baby. It's time. You've been hiding in the shadows, lurking, waiting for your opportunity, and here it is. This is going to sound crazy, all right? Underdog, ESPN Sleeper. Everyone's got him somewhere around wide receiver 45 to 47. I got him at wide receiver 29. Okay. At this moment, my wide receiver 29. So this is the biggest difference of this video of ADP versus my rankings.
Sure.
Let's be honest. The rookie season was bad. It was bad. Okay. Disappointing. Any word you can, insert there. 8.8 points per game is nothing to be excited about. But anyone who watched Seattle play last year, who actually watched their games and looked at how talented Jackson Smith-Njigba was when he had an opportunity, they know what he's capable. And they also know how poorly he was deployed in that offense as a rookie. This is only highlighted, by the way, when JSN is on a Chicago Bears fan podcast this offseason, and his old offense coordinator, Shane Waldron, who's now in Chicago, they want to know, like, hey, what do you like about this guy? He's a great guy, right? And then Jason's like, do I have to, are we live? Do I got to talk about Shane Waldron? And they're like, yeah, we're live. And he's like, great guy, I guess. There's obviously some tension there. Clearly Jason and Shane Waldron were not on the same page. And it makes sense because they used him like a 40-year-old slot receiver. His average depth of target last year was 184th. JSN, a dynamic player at Ohio State, putting up huge numbers alongside Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And you're deploying him in the most basic, no creativity, no, enthusiastic type of role. But here's the good news. The number one thing I look at when projecting from one season to another is where is the change for every single team. And I'm not saying small changes. I'm not saying they signed like a depth offensive lineman,
sure.
Or they brought in a tight end too. No. Where is the big change? Where's the coaching changes, the pivotal dynamic changes? And that is exactly what the Seahawks did this year. Massive change. Pete Carroll's gone. They brought in Mike McDonald from the Ravens. Shane Waldron's now in Chicago. They brought in Ryan Grubb from the Washington Huskies last year. Remember, Ryan Grubb last year, the head coach of the Huskies, brought them to a college football playoffs, and he's already talked about how excited he is to use JSN in this offense. Keep in mind, Ryan Grubb helped Rome Odunze get drafted round 1, Jalen Polk early round 2, and Jalen McMillan in round 3. 3 wide receivers from the same school in the same draft, drafted in the first 3 rounds. Tell me the last time that's happened ever in the history of the NFL. Okay.
Yeah.
He's also led his quarterback, Michael Penix Jr., to being drafted top 10. Last year, the Washington Huskies, and this is out of 130 plus Power 5 schools. The Washington Huskies, first in yards per game, 12th in passing attempts per game, and 9th in total touchdowns per game. I know they played in the Pac-12, but the point is, Ryan Grubb had that offense humming. He had Penix throwing it all over the yard. One of my favorite comps for Penix coming out was Geno Smith. I think we see a revival for Smith. I think JSN is going to continue to grow in year 2. His role is going to get bigger. Mike McDonald's already come out and said JSN's going to be a massive part of what we do here in Seattle. And obviously it's a bit of a projection, but I am believing this new coaching staff is going to right the wrong of the old coaching staff. And I just think DK is going to be better this year. I think Lockett could be great, and I think JSN is also going to break out.
Yeah, look, I think the conversation is there, and I think if at the wide receiver 30 mark, which he's at wide receiver 29 compared to the community, I think there's an easy breakout there. And I think the biggest thing that we have to talk about maybe is Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett, he's probably not going to be the same person that he was this past year. Another year older, we saw the decrease in inefficiencies last year, even in that offense. Can he come in and JSN automatically steps up? And we heard the reports of JSN looking phenomenal in camp. He's taking big strides and everything.
The guy in camp right now everyone loves.
Yeah, so I agree. I would say this. I would say top, like, I'm not saying you saying this, but maybe like a top 15, a top 20 finish, maybe a little bit out of rounds, but if he finishes as a wide receiver 24 range, 25-ish, that feels really comfortable.
He has a chance, to be a really good flex or a wide receiver 2 on a consistent basis. Last year, Tyler Lockett, 23% of the target share. JSN was at 17%. And something you got to keep in mind is this team is going to run a lot more 3 wide receiver sets. So regardless, number one, I think JSN will be out there on 2 wide receiver sets more. But secondly, they will run more 3 wide receiver sets. I think Jason gets more opportunity to shine. I think he'll end up being like a really good flex. It's, not a top 12 season, but a really good flex or wide receiver 2. By the way, I don't think we account enough for the fact that Jason broke his wrist in preseason.
Right.
And then came back that same year to try and be effective. If you can't run block effectively, it's going to hurt how much you can get on the field. So I think it's actually impressive he saw 17% of the targets despite dealing with that issue. But anyway, on to your breakout.
I completely agree. All right, my last breakout here, I don't think there's no surprise to anyone. My wide receiver 7, pretty much on par with the community on Underdog, ESPN, and Sleeper, and that is Garrett Wilson. Yeah. Once again, probably pretty obvious, but I'm all in on him. I don't know if I want to make him a mine guy or that's kind of too obvious this year. Comment down below if I should. But we have to look at this quarterback purgatory type of offense that he's been for the past 2 years, right? In 2022, Zach Wilson, Joe Flacco, Mike White, Chris Streveler. This past year, in 2023, Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle. If you want to throw in Aaron Rodgers for the first 4 snaps of the season, sure. Yeah. In the span of 2 years, Wilson played with 5 different quarterbacks. Once again, 6 if you want to include Aaron Rodgers. And it's kind of crazy because of how many targets this guy is demanding in his first 2 years. When we look at it, even though he's done nothing, my guy is getting everything. And coming in with Aaron Rodgers really sets the expectations of where he can be. Going in a dynasty perspective, specifically, and in redraft, he's going as a top 10 quarterback and essentially has finished as a wide receiver 26 and 21 because we're projecting him to be a guy with Aaron Rodgers. I think you are just getting gold there at a great value, in my opinion. So let's go to the targets here. In this past 2 years, the targets in 2022, 139 targets. In 2023, 163 targets. This year alone, in 2023, that was more targets than Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka, Diggs, A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen. Honestly, the list could go on. But those are some big names that we know are target hogs in their offense. And what have we seen from Aaron Rodgers in the past? He knows how to produce fantasy relevant wide receivers. And this is an offense that he is familiar with and this is something that we're excited to see going into the 2024 season. So once again, this is pretty obvious, but this is somebody that we should not be ignoring. This is also somebody going in the late rounds, in the late first rounds or early second rounds in your redraft leagues that you can get at a phenomenal value.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson, the issue's been catchable targets. His reception percentage in the first 2 years hovering around 58, 59%. If Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, the sky is truly the limit, because we know he's going to be more around like the 66, 67% catch rate if those targets are all a lot more catchable. So yeah, he's definitely due for a breakout. But that's it for today. Do us a favor, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe if you like the content. And we got to let you know that our draft guide is coming out on July 1st.
Come on.
You want to see a little sneak peek? In our draft guide, we'll have projections for every single team, every conference, every team. You'll know where every target, rushing attempt, and reception comes from for every single team. You can unlock this by becoming a Mother Flocker member on the Flock Fantasy website with the promo code LAND. You can check that out in the description. You'll also get updated rankings, a team review, and a lot more. So we appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. All love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.